Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Big Ideas Podcast, the podcast where three co-hosts rotate roles to explore real conversations, meaningful ideas, and the decisions that shape our lives. I'm Justin Gabassi. I am a human optimization coach. I'm a professional touring musician. I'm a drummer. I'm currently traveling the globe right now to study a major passion of mine, which is human connection and human reconnection, and just trying to learn from other cultures, how they connect through cuisine and art and music and health and wellness practices and things that maybe we don't know about in the U.S. In an attempt to bring us all closer together. So who else we have on the call today? I'd say we go ladies first.
Well, I'm Jessica Broadway. I'm a coach, author, and speaker, mom, wife, ministry leader, and I get to work with people that are navigating different seasons of change. It's a super big passion of mine, one of my multi-passions, and one of my current favorite roles is co-hosting with you guys here on the Big Ideas.
And I'm Mark Steiner. I am a father and a partner and a mate and a creative and an entrepreneur. And I'm the founder and CEO of Gig Salad. And I am a podcast host now. Look at us.
Yeah, I forgot to include that in my bio. Where's everybody at right now? Jessica, where were you actually, and where are you now?
Well, I was in the car line of shame. That is the car line for late people. Nobody really calls it that. It's just me. But I'm sure that's not as big a deal for anybody else, but it is for me. I hate it when we're late and I have to go to the other car line where you get dropped off if you're late. But now I'm back in my home studio, getting ready in Nixa, Missouri, getting ready to hash out an episode with you two.
Mark.
And I'm in Atlanta, Georgia. Yes, it is. It is south. It is a southern country down here. And I'm here for a conference, Music Biz. I've been having a great time. I think I'm going to go to a Cubbies game, Cubs versus Braves, Cubs at Braves. I'm looking forward to that. Both in first place currently. Don't hold me to that, depending on when this gets posted. Yeah, I'm having a great time. Been networking up a storm, meeting some really interesting people. Met some people last night that are a Gig Salad member. It was wonderful. So yeah.
Nice, man. I'm in my final couple days here in Thailand. I've been here for, over 3 months. And I've been for a little while. I've been on Koh Phangan Island in the Gulf of Thailand. And I'm actually, I don't think we have a podcast while I'll be at this next location, so I'll just drop it here. But I'm about to head to Bali for a pinch on my way back to the U.S. So learning more stuff. Yeah, I'm really excited to get into today's topic because we touched on this for the listeners. You may want to go back to episode 23, I believe it was, when we were talking about labels. And today is kind of a follow-up to that, actually, because that particular podcast stimulated some emotions from a couple of some of the feedback that we've gotten. And people were saying that it might have evoked, like that particular episode spoke to, is labeling right or wrong? Like, we automatically do this, right? And so my goal is to see if we can find creative ways to have conversations differently, where maybe we still lean into those habitual patterns of labeling, but maybe other questions or other ways we can talk around it. And at some point I'll drop a story in here. But I was kind of curious, since that last episode, have either one of you guys had any feedback or any thoughts personally on other ways we could tackle this?
I have a kind of an interesting share. Yesterday morning in the wee hours, because I'm an hour ahead here on the East Coast, a friend from Springfield called me, and it wasn't because of an episode that he had watched at Big Ideas, but it was an episode that he had listened to that I was a guest on. And in that episode, I talked about the labels that I had put on myself. How he recognized himself and or of one of my friend groups that I could have been speaking to and about. And he wasn't wrong, but it was really one. I was really thrilled that a friend of mine took the time to listen to a podcast that I had been promoting. Two, that he really was listening and it resonated with him. Three, that it compelled him to immediately call me right after listening and saying, hey, was that, it was kind of like, was that about me or us, and it was along this line. It was along the line of how I was talking about how I had viewed myself for so many years and possibly how I had viewed others. I think labeling is a thing that we do. The moment I got my ADHD diagnosis, it was like, there you go, label. That explains everything. And I do that. Sometimes it can come across as judgment and being critical. Sometimes it's just being able to name something. And as you recognize something, with sickness, there's symptoms, and then all of a sudden you get a diagnosis, and a lot of times it could be, well, thank goodness, now I know. Let's get on to treatment and how do we process all this information now, et cetera. So that's a very long answer to, I haven't, I don't know that I've had conversations specifically about our episode about labeling, but it's very much something that I think a lot about. I've
You
naming
bring
things.
up a really good point, Mark, about that part of like the aha or the naming it, and especially the space that I work in, most people come to me because they're experiencing something they can't name. So being able to name something helps the brain go, okay, what's next? And we're always looking for, your brain doesn't like unknowns. So it's always scanning for information or pattern recognition. So there's part of this that's like physiological, like that we're going to do. And there's like a healthy level of it that we need information, we need input to measure against like how we're going to engage. Some people call it reading the room, So there's like a part of this I think that is necessary just because we're human beings and we need input to make decisions to then do things. I think where it gets messy is where we blame things on it. The Enneagram was going around for a long time and it was very popular. And I heard a lot, well, I am this way because I'm a 5 or I'm a 6 or I'm a 7 or right. And so it became part of the identity. And I think that's where, we work a really like scary line. I know I've personally experienced labels myself. I've put them on myself before. I say I'm a mom and I'm a wife, right? That is a label, but it's also like a role that I fill. So it helps people learn facts about me. When we do our intros, people need facts to say like, should I listen? What is it about this person that I need to know? I think we run a really tough line when we start excluding people because of labels or making assessments on whether or not we want to spend time. I don't know. This is really messy. I'm glad we're having another look at it. So I definitely think there's something that a good part to keep and maybe something we need to reconsider.
I'm going to throw you guys in the audience for a bit of a curveball here. And I want to circle back, Mark, and I want to, at some point, I want to dive more into that and see how it made you feel, like the analysis of the conversation with your friend based around your previous labeling of yourself and maybe the group that you were referring to. So, of course, as life would have it, after we have this, last episode, I had to put my money where my mouth is, and I was playing a show here on the island, and currently there's a bunch of different demographics here right now, but one of the larger demographics right now are from Israel. granted, you know, there's been a lot of unrest there, and a lot of these people are coming here to chill out. And I've made friends with quite a few of them. And so I got invited to this going away dinner for one of these friends I made, and I'm at this table, and not many of them are speaking English, right? Some of them are like super kind though, and they're like, hey, they're kind of translating into English for me. And this guy to my left, he knew English pretty well, and he noticed that I had made friends with other people in the group. So he starts asking me questions, and one of his first questions was, "Are you what's your religion?" And I said, "Well, I don't really subscribe to any particular man-made dogmatic religion. I was raised Catholic. Prior to this trip and traveling around the world for over 8 months, or going on 8 months, I would have maybe labeled myself as a Christian. And I'm not saying that I don't believe that that's not beliefs that I have beliefs in. There's different parts of man-made dogma that those themes resonate with me, but the thing is, I don't really adhere to any particular religious label." And I was trying to explain this to him, and he was looking at me like a deer in the headlights. And I was like, well, here's how I was raised. And then I had this uncle that went into the Peace Corps, and he studied Buddhism and Hinduism and all kinds of different religions. And then I took world religion in college, and now I've been traveling and meeting people from all walks of life and all different religions, right? And you get to know these people outside of these labels. And man, it was tough to navigate the conversation. And I go, hey, I'll tell you what, I'm not going to answer the question to the extent that you want. So how about we just have a conversation, see if we like each other? And by the way, why did you ask me that question? And he said, well, because you're sitting here with all these people who are from a place that you're not from, you're from the US. And he goes, quite honestly, I was trying to feel you out. I was trying to figure out if you were one of us, in multitude of ways. So as the evening progressed, we became friends, and we've been in touch ever since. And so like, it makes me wonder, had I just answered no, that's not what I believe in, and then would that have spawned a debate, right? And then would have walls come up and stuff. So that's the thing I'm just trying to figure out for all of us.
My response to that is, are we talking about, do we want to take a hard right and talk about religion today? Or do we want to stay in the label zone? Because that's definitely like a hard, thing to unpack. There is, I heard that he was fielding you out for threat assessment. Like, are you friend or foe? Like, right. It based on his perception of what a Christian might be, or a believer in religion, a religious practicer, someone who's practicing religion. His experience with religion was shaping how he was able to hear or not hear feedback, right? And so he was assessing you for risk and threat. And I think that's really a lot of time how we use labels is based on our perception and how we experienced it, an encounter with someone like that. Then we are then projecting that, and we're filtering other people to find out if they're going to be a friend or foe, right? And that's somewhat biology. I think the unhooking has to be like, maybe my experience isn't the only experience I could have with somebody. I get it all the time. People find out that I am a professing Christian. Man, all kinds of thematic ideology comes in based on their experience with religion or with people who profess Christ. Like, but the alternative is that I don't do that. And then I'm being disingenuous to my belief system. So like, how do you disarm, and how do you be also in integrity with how you believe and not having to apologize for what you believe too? Like, that's a very gentle conversation that needs to be had.
Well, then there's a whole nother layer. Once you say you're a Christian, it's like, oh, what type of Christian? Which denomination are you a part of? what is specifically your dogma? What is your, what's your doctrine? I call where we live now the belt buckle of the Bible Belt.
Mm-hmm.
It's headquarters of certain churches and other faith-based colleges and universities and this and that. And I came from the Northeast, and though at the time when I moved to the Ozarks, I had already shifted and was a part of a non-denominational church by that point. But I was raised Catholic, and as I've watched over the past 30 years how different Christian churches interact with one another, I remember there was I think it was the Far Side. I remember a cartoon strip that said, if you remember the Far Side, it was like 3 different blocks, and it was like the first block said it was a definition of a cult, and the conclusion was a cult is whatever the church that's down the block. It's whatever church you're not a part of is not the truth. And it's a really interesting phenomenon. And I see it in politics, I see it in religion, and it's why I really ride that proverbial fence of, what do I say? How do I name myself and do it in a safe way, in an accurate way? It's a really tough one. Just yesterday, I have 2. I'm not gonna. I don't want to rant on here or go on, but I have 2 specific examples of yesterday. I had a meeting, a business meeting in a restaurant. I introduced myself, and he's from the Northeast, and he is Jewish, and he said, are you in a tribe? He, like many people think, and like there is many Steiners that are Jewish, he was wanting to know, am I one of them? Am I one of him? And I've been doing this for a long time. I've been in the entertainment business for a very long time. And so if anybody's ever asked me, are you Jewish? I'm going to answer, correct. I'm going to answer truthfully. I'm not, but I love the Jewish religion. I love the Jewish people. I don't have a problem with other people with different beliefs. And but we had a really interesting conversation about the Messiah, and the only difference between us is we believe that the Messiah has come, and it was just a great conversation. But I like to try to diffuse those conversations by just saying, I come in peace. I'd rather be your friend and just meet you at a place of love and acceptance than debate or get into conflict, because we have 2 different views, and so.
Yeah, and I don't want to make it about religion, because it can be any number of things. Like when I observe groups of people, especially as I've been traveling, it could be sports, especially soccer or football, they're pretty passionate. Like we're passionate in the US, but if football, especially different parts of the world, it is like religion almost, right?
Yeah.
It can be religion, politics, sports. And I've had these experiences since I've been on the road where people have done amazing things for me. I was standing at a bus stop in Morocco, in Rabat, Morocco, and I missed the bus because there was not really a good label. And this guy walks out of his place and he said, are you waiting on the bus? Because the signage isn't very good. And did you miss it? And I'm like, yeah. He's like, that happens all the time. And he invites, I'm assuming was his wife or his girlfriend. She didn't have a ring on, but they kissed goodbye. So I'm thinking this is probably the girl he's with. And he said, she's getting ready to leave. Where do you need to go? She'll give you a ride. There was no discussion about anything, no labels. We had like a 5-10 minute conversation. We felt each other out. I guess he could tell I was a decent enough guy. And now his lady friend is giving me a ride 20 minutes through Morocco, right? And I just think we've talked before about our childhood and about cliques in schools and stuff like that. And I looked up some statistics, and I was like, how many people have died? How many men have died at the hands of other men in the name of religion? Right? Not, but again, it's not really religion. And the answers were even, it's not really religion. The thing that people get in a fight about is us versus them. Right? And it's been millions. It's been anywhere from 20 to 80 million people because of differences. But when you can, it's like, how do we subdue or navigate around these automatic evolutionary needs to label to see if it's safe, like you mentioned, Jessica, versus making it an us versus them thing, and then the walls come up and now we can't have a conversation, because that's the biggest issue, right?
If I can jump in here, I want to reiterate for the listener, there is a healthy side to finding your people. We talk and we preach about this, like, find your people, find your tribe. Your tribe is going to have things and labels that match up with you, right? And that's what creates community and a sense of familiarity, safety for you to grow. You can align with raising your kids a certain way, or, you're either in a public school, or you're homeschooled because you want to be in a community that supports your belief systems. So that sense of community is essential for growth, for emotional well-being, for all of those things. The problem for me comes when you say you can't come into my tribe, or I can't be human to you, or I can't treat you with love and compassion because you don't believe the same as me. And that comes from, and again, this is my lens and the way I see the world, that comes from unhealed pain of the past, trauma or bad experiences that you've had when someone used that label, right? I just talked to my mom about this morning. I was on another podcast in which I was talking about my growing up in the mission field, and she was reminiscing with me and said when they went to plant churches, she never used like the name of the church, because there was another church in the area that had just come through and done a lot of damage, and we shared one part of the name in common, and she didn't know if it was okay. She didn't want to have people sort her or dismiss her or not come and enjoy what we were doing because of a name, so like there is that piece that we have to watch out for other people. We have to treat people with compassion because they're of their own pain, and we have to be willing to, instead of take offense, I think the one thing I tried to do is lean in with curiosity, right? And like Mark, you pointed out, I come in peace, my question is, what are you afraid might happen? Like, what are you afraid of? I've asked that to people before. What's your concern, or did you have it? What's your experience? But I feel like part of people bridging that or healing that for people is to be honest, and not, if people know where you stand and then they can see that you're different, or that you're wanting to be engaged in that conversation and that you're not defensive when you say it, I think they respect that of you. And I think in your way of you talking to those people, they're going to respect you being truthful. Like, nobody wants somebody who isn't honest about what they believe or who they are just to please other people. That's even more alarming, I think.
Mark, going back to that conversation, how did that conversation unfold? Like, what kind of reflections did you have? And then did your friend take stuff that you said like offensive, or what? Like, can you speak to that whole thing with the podcast?
No, that's the point. I think it was, it was curious. I think it goes to curiosity. There's possibly even excitement. Like, oh, one of me, like, this is somebody I can talk I can talk to about, as you mentioned, Jessica, just cultural things. It's like, have you been bar mitzvahed? What was your Seder like last year? Whatever. I don't, what's it like to be a Jewish person right now? It's complicated. I think it's an opportunity to reflect and discuss and to work through life with some, and you're trying to assess, is this someone who, what's the perspective that I might get from this conversation right now? And you go into a sort of, you're sort of measuring and you're putting up bumpers, and you're placing expectations on how this is going to go. And but it was very pleasant, and I like that. This is the stuff I like to talk about. It's human connection. I happen to think I think that we go through life with a single a single thought immediately comes to us always, which is, am I safe with you? Mm-hmm. I think I had this revelation 2 weeks ago. I was walking from my downtown office to the Arts Fest, and I got to the corner where there was a light, and there was a woman pushing a baby carriage, a young lady. And as I was approaching, and she was waiting, I was about to wait. I came into this space, and neither one of us looked at each other. There was probably an opportunity to at least acknowledge each other. Could have said hello, could have smiled, just eye contact. None of that happened. I could have initiated that. And I walked away from that situation. I walked away from that moment a little embarrassed and a little ashamed. And I felt like I missed an opportunity there to just be friendly, to just make eye contact with people, and just to make a pleasant eye contact, and maybe just a smile, just an acknowledgement. I see you. And if you're wondering if I'm okay, if you're safe, here's a mother with a child, you're safe with me. And I just got done watching Project Hail Mary. And if you're not familiar with the book or the movie, it is two aliens to one another learning how to communicate. And I just thought, we humans don't do that enough. We don't say to one another, I come in peace. We don't just, all it would take is a hello, just a stranger. If we just went through life and just at a minimum just said, hello, hi.
Yeah. That signals to the other person, I see you as a human first and foremost, without knowing anything about you, right?
That's it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I see you, and that's enough for me to offer an olive branch, to greet you, to say, I don't have to have permission to be kind to you based on, that's the other side of that is when your labels are earning you position, earning you privilege, etc. They become like pre-qualifiers. Like, I'm not going to say hi to anybody that doesn't XYZ, right? But when you just are friendly, when you smile, when you just show up, honestly, I think that's one thing I love about school volunteering is the one place that we come together because of our common love for being part of our kids' lives. I can stand next to someone and serve, and we can believe dynamically different, politically, religiously, family system wise, anything. But we're there serving our children together. That is what we have in common. That human connection that's one of the beautiful things I love about the volunteer world, is it does bring people together.
I love that example, because let's say you take that particular situation, and I don't know how many people are in the room when you're doing that, in any given event. What is it? How many people come together for something like that, Jessica?
Oh, you could have 5 or you could have 100, or several hundred, it varies depending on what the event is, but.
So you're there for a common purpose, and that's arguably one of the greatest. Is to serve kids, right? To be an example and support children. So it doesn't matter if it's 5 or 100 people, and everyone everyone's in the same zone. Everyone's appreciating everyone else, probably having conversations about the reason that you're there. But I maybe I'm wrong, but I wouldn't think that people are bringing up too many labels at that point. You know what I mean? Like, I would think if you did it in reverse and people came into that shared space and then you bring up labels and then it gets divisive, it would almost feel weird. Like hey, whatever, XYZ, Susie, John, we were just getting along great, but now you asked me a host of questions and now you're trying to categorize and label me. And this is what I'm trying to get at, is like what you experience there, but broader amongst human beings. You know what I mean?
Well, but that, like, I will say we have a unique little volunteer group, and there have been times like we all know, because we've created a space excuse me, where it's okay to be disagreeable or disagree without becoming disagreeable. Like that's what I want to be. I don't want to think the same as everybody else, because then I don't get challenged to stretch my mind, and there is that group. I can think of several situations over the years where I've been there and they have said, like, this is how I believe, or I bet you're this, and I bet money you think like this, and we have a laugh about it, and I was like, and I'm still here writing out candygrams with you because I love your kid just like I love my kid. We allow the thing that's bigger than our opinions to unite us. And if you're going in trying to defend your position and tell everybody else how they're wrong, I will say you're on the wrong side of that conversation.
Now we're getting somewhere. See, we're talking about, like, so that concept of you guys having a shared space, I just feel like we're starting to touch on some things where we can maybe find some answers to this whole riddle. You guys have this space, but the overall goal is greater than the individual divisive labels or opinions, right? And I would argue that we're all on this rock together called Earth, and we're growing fast, and it's getting smaller, and there's less resources. And I would think this is the silliest time to be being divisive amongst each other over the obsession of labels. I want to ask you guys a question. Like, I personally, right now in this moment, I've got a personal problem with labels. Like, to me, it's negative connotations. Like, for example, even if it's a diagnosis, I've worked with a lot of people that have come to me and they're like, the doctor says I have this, or I've been told I have that. And maybe it's not a physician. And a lot of times those diagnoses are accurate, right? But once you slap a label on things, yes, the brain can attach to it and maybe you can go through steps to fix it. But maybe you guys can help me see this differently. But they seem so confining, and there seems to be a negative overtone to me anyway. So is there a positive to labeling? I mean, or is it an old, outdated evolutionary thing?
I don't think so. It's a safeguard, but I think it comes from a place of fear. And
okay, boom, that's what I was talking about. Fear, like not negativity or positivity, but maybe fear versus love, right? Or something.
That's it. It comes down to that for me. Everything's fear and love. The rest of the story of when I was approaching this woman, I was afraid. I was afraid to put myself out there, to be vulnerable by saying, like, by appearance, why is this, and I go to the worst. Why is this creepy old man saying hi? What's he want? What's his agenda? When that's not my inclination was to just be kind and just greet somebody. But I was the one that was afraid. I was afraid of being rejected. I was afraid of saying hello and then having a negative response back. It's so silly and weird and crazy. But that comes from that is based in fear. We don't love when we're afraid. When we're afraid, love has no space within that.
Did you have another experience in your past? Like, did you have a particular experience or heard of an experience that created that narrative for you, or that consideration that if I reach out and say hello, like, because the way I hear you say that is some sort of thought came into your mind. You're like, oh, I got to pull back. Like, those are driven from somewhere. Did you have an experience where you've reached out before and been misinterpreted or misunderstood? Or is it just a social kind of ideology or things you've heard of? Like, where does that come from, that thought that you could be perceived otherwise?
As creepy or whatever. No, I think it was. I I think what happened was I hesitated. I didn't say hi right away. You know, you come into a space, and the moment you start measuring up, like, do I, don't I? Uh, I'm afraid. That's being very vulnerable, just out of nowhere, saying hi to a stranger, kind of thing. And then now, there's been this space, there's been this time, and now I'm going to say hi. Well, I can't say hi now. Now I'm really weird, and she's most definitely going to think I'm a creeper. Like, just all. So
You're right.
have I misfired before? Absolutely, because I've hesitated, because I've questioned, and then or somebody else says hello, and I'm like, oh, hi. I'm shocked that they took the initiative to do it. It's a mind game. I was going to say something. It's so. I promised myself in the moment that will not happen again. I walked into the Arts Fest and I had the most unique, different experience I had ever had in a setting like that, because I was so intentional about every single person I came into contact with, whether it was the person manning their booth. I was so conscious and mindful and deliberate about how I approach people in that moment, and it was a wonderful experience. I hadn't had something like that before, and I've been trying to hold on to it ever since. Being at the party last night, a bunch of strangers. I'm not drinking, so I don't have the liquid courage to jump in. And what I found was just saying hello. I didn't have to have any other leading question like, "Oh, what are you doing here? Where are you from? What's your industry?" Most of us were wearing name tags, so that gave you a sort of an entry. But the times I just said hello, it was wonderful. And it turned into some amazing conversations. Amazing conversations.
Something I really like about what I've experienced, and I, by the way, I would recommend anybody, if you travel, to at least figure out and make a little note of key phrases like hello and how are you and have a good day, good afternoon, good evening, things like that. So something I've seen a lot happen, and it's been a while since I've been in the U.S., so I'm excited to go back and kind of see how this goes. But it's usually a smile, especially in Thailand. It's really refreshing. It's a smile. It's the hands come together with sometimes a bit of a bow, and even in even in Morocco, there's a phrase where they just say, it's basically hello and bless you, in their way, or hello and have a good day, which also kind of takes away that putting you on defensive with a question. Because I have a tendency to say, hey, how are you? Hello, how are you? Maybe somebody doesn't want to answer that. So it's been really refreshing to get an acknowledgement and then have a nice day, or hope you're having a nice day, or something. I'm going to continue to practice that, when I come back too.
I am of the opinion, which I love. That's one thing I love about like the other cultures, is there's very tradition, a lot of tradition in the way they greet one another. And even in the United States, right? You have howdy when you're in Texas. You have, hey y'all, they have the Southern goodbye, even, there's just cultural things depending on what part of the country you're in. And learning those and being adaptable to where you are and reading those cultural clues is an olive branch that says, I see you and I respect the way that you do things here, and I'm willing to to participate when I'm here, as in Rome, when in Rome, right? I do think that labels are helpful, and here's my differentiator. facts tell, stories sell, right? That's been the age-old kind of phrase in marketing. And so facts are input or information, but those are data points that you can collect information. But I would encourage people to lean into, what's the story? What's your story, right? So we're always going to need information about people. We're conditioned. We fill out forms, male, female. Even some forms ask you what your religious affiliation are in case you're in an emergency and there's some religious practice that they need to observe, and be considerate of. So we have to have information about people. A name is a label, right? Are you your name? Your last name, what does that mean? Your lineage, all of these things. Labels are going to exist and are part of our data collection. It can't stop there, though. We have to take it a step further and be willing to ask people about their story. Who are you? What's your journey like? Tell me a story about you. I hear a great conversational tool is when someone says, like, if I was to ask you, Justin, like, hey, have you ever been to, bungee jumping, right? And you say, yeah. And I go, me too. And I tell you all about my bungee jumping experience, right? Or I could say, what moment of bungee jumping was your favorite? Like, I could ask you about your experience before I ever offer any kind of insight about what I've been through that's the same. And that's bringing out people's stories, having great conversations. Like Mark, you said, when you smile and say hello, you open an opportunity to hear someone's story about how they see the world. And that is a curious state to be, and one I love to encourage myself and with my kids.
I found too that, for me anyway, I've had to suspend. I've had to. The reason why this is such a passionate topic for me is because I've had to suspend my own prejudgment of labels, and I've been asked to do that because I don't want to be hypocritical, right? So I don't want people judging me because I'm this or that, where I'm from, age, gender, whatever, any kind of thing, right? And so if I don't want that, then I have to suspend my judgment. And then secondly, find creative ways to navigate around the conversation, which I really love what you said there, Jessica, because you're like, you asked about the experience versus, stopping at, oh, that's what you did. I was thinking through my head as you spoke, oh, I could label them that I was a bungee jumper and that was either a place we could connect or disconnect, right? To separate on some level. But you took it another direction. So, as we kind of start to wrap, I think where I want to take this is just, we've covered a lot of ground. And I think overall, I wanted to bring awareness to each of us, but also to our listeners. What are some just one or two takeaways from each of us of people to consider? You've mentioned them. Maybe they're worth repeating. Little tacts, if you will. You know how I like hacks and stuff like that. Ways to optimize. In this case, optimize communication amongst the human race.
I'm still grappling with and trying to understand like what our definition of labeling is, and if I entirely agree with Jessica's take on it, because it comes with for me, labeling something, like putting a sticker on it and saying, this is who I am. This is I'm and that it's permanent. I think that's another part of this conversation is the sticker that I have on myself today, what I've always been and what I always will be, and what I currently am. It's a real, because if it seems like, or it feels like, I think I know where you're coming from, Jessica, which is, as a Christian, we are supposed to not be afraid of professing our faith. We should never not, like, that is what I am. It's who I am. This is what if I have any identity, it is I'm a Christ follower, and I will say it and I will take it to my grave. And I can appreciate that. I understand that theoretically. I understand it philosophically, and from the standpoint of that is my religion, that is my belief. after that, I think my labels have changed so often. I didn't know I had ADHD for most of my life. And then I got the diagnosis and it was like, oh, that's what I am. I got ADHD. And I wore the moniker. And I don't know. It's a good, I don't know that I have any closing thoughts other than it's a good conversation and it's probably worth another round because I think there's a lot to be said about it. My closing thought is do not be afraid.
Yeah.
And approach people and say hello.
And maybe I don't need to belabor it, but I feel as though I do need to say, I'm not saying that, I'm just saying they have a place. They help us learn about someone. They help us learn about their interests. Like even I like volleyball is a label. If that's how you're going to, is identifying with something that it describes you, if that's what you're doing. If we're talking about labels in the sense that they are judgments or reasons to or not to engage with somebody, that's another conversation. So I understand that where the muddy waters are is like what is a label? Are we saying that it is an assessment and like a judgment on someone, and we have dismissed or accepted based on those identifiers? Or are we looking at them as information that we're collecting, asking questions, being curious, learning about people? I think there's a space that can exist where you use those to learn more about someone, and those are things that people can recall. People aren't used to being asked, who are you? And don't tell me about your job. Like they're not used to that. So there's a certain level of like ease that we have to say, tell me what you do for a living, tell me more. What is it that you love about that job? And being willing to have, if I've had a bad interaction with an accountant and someone says, well, I'm an accountant, I have a choice. I can say, ugh, I would hate your job. Or I can say, what is it about your job? Tell me something that's exciting for you about being an accountant. What's your favorite moment? Then I allow myself to dismiss my past experiences, as painful or frustrating as they may be, and I allow myself to lean into experiencing it in a different way. And that would be my last piece of advice, is that anytime your previous experiences are going to hijack the moment from connecting with someone else, become more curious about that and maybe explore it, lean into it a little bit. You might learn something.
Well, thank you both for going down this rabbit hole with me today. And hopefully you, the listener, took away some ways to be more aware, to maybe suspend judgment, to find more creative ways to communicate with each other. At the end of the day, how we communicate is paramount to how we get along. So anyway, thanks for listening to Big Ideas, a podcast about people, perspective, and the ideas that shape who we're becoming. If this episode sparks something for you, stay curious. We'll see you next time.